Very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shereen Bhan. The top story tonight. 4 days to go before domestic flights resume operations. The government has announced a slew of rules which include a cap on airfares for the next 3 months. The routes have been divided into 7 different sections based on the duration of the flights. Now, airlines will resume 30% of operations. That will be about 150 flights from Monday. Protective equipment like masks and gloves will be mandatory. The aviation minister gave the example of the Delhi-Mumbai route to explain the cap on airfare. The base fare for this route cannot be below 3,500 or above 10,000 rupees. Now remember, taxes and other airport charges will be extra. That's over and above this base fare. That's not all. 40% of the seats must be sold at a price which is below the midpoint of the price band. So, for an example, for the Delhi-Mumbai route, that would mean 40% of the tickets must be sold below a base price of 6,750 rupees. Remember, the taxes are additional. SpiceJet's chairman and managing director Ajay Singh says being allowed to resume operations comes as a massive relief for the sector and that the airline will start with 150 flights across sectors. He also says that while all routes will be operational, the 30% operational cap will mean lower frequency of flights. But former Indigo president Aditya Ghosh says the decision to impose a price cap on airfares is not the best one, won't help the consumers or the airlines. Take a look.
We are hoping that pretty much everything will be operational. The routes, as you know, have been bucketed in between the metro to metro, the metro to non-metro. In any case, within the next 2 or 3 days, starting Monday, you will see that most routes are operational. Of course, the frequencies would be lower than they used to be because of this 33% cap. We hope that we can get close to 150 flights operating on Monday. There is a lot of pent-up demand. Interestingly, in addition to people trying to get back to their homes, data actually shows us that there is a significant number of people who are actually trying to even go on vacation. When we looked at the data in our office, we said, what's going on here? But the queries are there, and it'll be interesting to see how it really pans out.
This sets a very bad precedent, in terms of price regulation as a way of either, helping consumers or airlines. It sets a very, very bad precedent. It's not happening in any other sector. We are not putting a fair, a tariff or a pricing cap on, let's say, motorcycles or cars or, something of that sort.
Well, that's the debate on capping airfares. Aviation Minister Hardeep Puri has defended the government's decision to put a cap on airfares. In a conversation with our colleague Anu Sharma, the Aviation Minister said that the fare cap was part of the objective to ensure affordable travel and reduce price distortion during the COVID times. Take a look.
A few days ago, the government said that flights have been suspended till May 31st, and then you said that states also give their nod in order to resume flights. What changed in a matter of 2-3 days?
Well, I think nothing changed. But if you look at what the Ministry of Home Affairs said, when they extended the previous phase of the lockout, they said that the next phase, lockdown 4, would be till end of May. That's all they said. When I was interviewed, I said, as far as the civil aviation sector is concerned, the airports, the airlines, they have been ready for quite some time to resume and commence domestic civil aviation activities in a calibrated manner. I had said that on record. We were ready. We could have started the flights on the 15th. But then, railway operations had to start, bus operations had to start, interstate, etc. A lot of people had to be transported from the place where they work to their original places of residence. And airlines will have only very limited number of people compared to the railways. But we decided to give it a little more time. And nowhere did we say that it had to wait till 30th May. I said, in fact, it could commence even earlier. We took a call after discussions with the state governments. Many state governments still had some anxieties. But if you're dealing with a large number of people coming back by railways, surely dealing with a much smaller number coming by airports provided by airlines with all safety measures and precautions in place makes it easier. So we took a considered decision after due consideration of all the factors, our discussions with all the stakeholders, and we came to the conclusion that we would start a limited number of flights, initially about 33% from Monday the 25th. Then we'll review our experience, see how it's gone before we take any steps to increase the number.
So what is the thought process behind the capping of fares, especially the lower end? Is that because you fear that airlines might exploit the situation and set the fares at a low bar?
No, I'm not suggesting that airlines would exploit it. Far from that. I think we are trying to meet two objectives. One objective is to ensure that air traffic is affordable. I mean, this is part of our overall philosophy. You know, when the Pradhan Mantri ji introduced the Udan scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, that was one idea. But more than that, we have had a situation where for 2 months there's been no revenue stream to the airlines, to the airports. Now we are only opening up 1/3. If our assumption is correct that there is a pent-up demand, a lot of people want to travel, and if, let's say, those who want to travel all demand and desire to travel, I'm hoping that only people who really need to travel, for whom it's essential, will come out. But if the numbers is much more than the number of seats available, you could, if you didn't have this ceiling, you could have people charging, because of demand, supply and market forces, very high rates. So the idea is to fix both a floor price and a ceiling price. We've had a lot of discussions with the airlines. Many of them felt that maybe we should not fix the upper limit. Some felt the upper limit should be higher. Others felt there should be no. But, you know, there have been occasions when on the Delhi-Mumbai trunk sector, airlines have sold tickets on a promotional basis for as little as 1,100 rupees. So we've capped it at a reasonable 3,500, maximum at 10,000, with 40% of the seats required to be sold between 3,500 and the mean point, so that there is an even distribution. And I think this is equitable. I personally believe that the airlines will be happy with this. But again, it's only for 3 months, because we find ourselves in an extraordinary situation, and this requires extraordinary responses.
Is the early resumption of flights part of the plan to provide them some relief, because no immediate relief measures did come for the aviation sector?
I don't agree with you. We have been in touch with the airline industry. They have many demands, very rightly so, because airlines all the world over are facing hardships. Airlines were in a crisis situation even before COVID came along. Our civil aviation sector is robust and it's growing, but individual airline companies, I keep saying, the aircraft manufacturers laugh their way to the bank, the airports do well, but the airlines still, because of their peculiar business models, take a beating sometime. Now, what we have decided to do is that we want to ensure that our exit from the lockdown is in a predictable, equitable and fair manner. And so that we are fair both to the consumer, the passenger, and to the airline company. We could have allowed the previous situation to it would have resulted in distortions, because I keep saying that the mean fare, average fare on the trunk route in Delhi-Mumbai 20 years ago was 5,100 rupees. Today it's 4,600 pre-COVID. So we have to make sure that there is no complete distortion. Look, there are a number of assumptions. What happens in case people decide not to travel because of the fear of the virus or because of restrictions, etc.? Then there will not be that kind of demand. Then we'll have people, then if you have an aircraft carrying 200 people, hypothetically, it may not be able to fill 100 seats. It takes care of this. On the other hand, if you have 100 flights between 2 points and you're only allowing 30, 33 to take place, there may be so much demand that the market forces, if they're allowed to operate in a very free manner, will result in tickets being astronomically priced. Now, I'm told airlines have had a bad time. So have the airports. A lot of people have lost their jobs. So this is a decision taken in the peculiar set of circumstances that we found ourselves in. It's for a period of 3 months.
How about international travel? When will that resume? And now, with respect to the domestic flights, when can the booking start?
I want to be very careful. Ideally, I would not have liked to answer the question. If you had not asked it so directly, I would have ducked it. But your question is a very direct one. Let me say, we started with Vande Bharat. In the first week, we only were supposed to bring back 13,800 people. We've ratcheted it up. We've increased the number of people we're bringing back. Between the 6th of May and the end of May, maybe the total number of people that will be brought back will be 50,000. We will see how the reopening of the domestic sector fares. But look, under Vande Bharat mission, those Indians who are normally resident abroad, they are being allowed to travel. Those who have jobs outside, those who have professional engagement. The total number we may have taken is only 6,000. But we're going to increase the flights to the US and from the US here, from the Gulf, etc. Slowly, I hope, after we brought back a certain number of people under Vande Bharat mission, when domestic civil aviation has reached a point of, the numbers are not 33% more, we will address the issue of international civil aviation. But I would not at this point of time, when we still have 4 days to go before opening the domestic sector, start speculating already on when we will go to the next sector. That would not be correct.
All right, that is the Civil Aviation Minister Hardeep Puri. In conversation with my colleague Anu Sharma, won't speculate on when international flight operations will restart, defending the government's decision to bring in a fare cap, saying that this is temporary till August and extraordinary times call for an extraordinary response. Well, it's not just the aviation sector which is ready to get back to business. The Indian Railways, which has only been running special Shramik trains for the last few weeks, plans to run 200 passenger trains daily from the 1st of June. These trains will not have any unreserved coach, while online booking for these trains has begun. Railway Minister Piyush Goyal has said that bookings of tickets will also resume at common service centres from Friday and at specific stations over the next 2 days. Listen.
मैं समझता हूँ समय आ गया देश को सामान्य स्थिति की ओर लेके जाने का। एक 2-3 दिन बाद जो काउंटर्स हैं, अलग-अलग स्टेशन, मेन स्टेशंस पे काउंटर्स भी शुरू करेंगे। उसको हम जांच रहे हैं कि स्थिति स्टेशनों पे बिगड़े ना, कोई भीड़ ना इकट्ठी हो जाए। उसके लिए उसका प्रोटोकॉल बना के और किन-किन स्टेशनों में ये काउंटर बुकिंग की सुविधा दे सकते हैं, ये अभी स्टडी हो रहा है पूरे विभाग में। तो प्रोग्रेसिवली ऐसे करके टिकट्स सबको सुविधापूर्वक मिलने लगेगी और आगे चल के कुछ ही दिनों में हम और ट्रेन शेड्यूल जल्द से जल्द अनाउंस करते रहेंगे और ट्रेन्स की सुविधा बढ़ाते रहेंगे।
So resumption of regular train services from the 1st of June, that's the Railway Minister Piyush Goyal. All of this comes even as the number of COVID-19 infections in India continue to rise. According to the Health Ministry website, the total cases have increased by over 5,600 in the last 24 hours. That's the number till 8 a.m. this morning. Of these, over 2,400 cases are active, but at 3,000, the rise in the number of recoveries continues to remain higher than the rise in the number of active cases. So that's good news. So as of this morning, India has a total of 1,12,000 cases. 3,435 people have died from the infection so far. Well, from COVID now to the other big crisis. For West Bengal and Odisha, COVID-19 is not the only challenge that has to be dealt with. Cyclone Umpan has claimed at least 72 lives in West Bengal, 17 of them in Kolkata alone. 5 deaths have been reported from Odisha. Kolkata is the worst hit, with wind speeds touching 133 kilometers per hour. Other districts, including North 24 and South 24 Parganas and also East Midnapur, have suffered extensive damage. Many areas in Kolkata are without electricity, internet and mobile services. West Bengal's Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has announced an ex gratia of 2.5 lakh rupees to the kin of the deceased. She's also appealed to Prime Minister Modi to visit the state and assess the damage. The Prime Minister taking to Twitter saying the nation stands with the people of Bengal and Odisha in this difficult hour.
Yesterday, what we have seen, the disaster, catastrophic. I can't imagine this type of disaster. We have never seen this type of. Everybody of Bengal is saying that earlier in the year 1737, there may be a disaster like this. There, so many persons have been died. This time also, thank God that at least we can save the lakhs of people because of the evacuation. And I will request the Prime Minister also to visit, have a look, how Sundarban, the Bay of Bengal, to the border of Bangladesh, and surrounding areas also, how it has been affected.
कोलकाता सड़क की तस्वीरें अम्फन तूफान से आए तबाही का मंजर बयां कर रही हैं। कोलकाता शहर में 300 से ज्यादा पेड़ गिरे हैं, न जाने कितने कितने लैंप पोस्ट तबाह हो गए हैं और कोलकाता नगर निगम के लिए इन पेड़ों को हटाना बड़ी ही टेढ़ी खीर साबित हो रहा है। इसी तरह से कई जगह रास्ते पर जो पेड़ गिरे हैं उनके बीच से लोग आ और जा रहे हैं। इसी तरह से कोलकाता नगर निगम की तरफ से पूरे शहर में ये ड्राइव चलाया जा रहा है, रास्तों को साफ करने का, पेड़ों को हटाने का, लैंप पोस्ट को हटाने का। कई जगहों पर कोलकाता में बिजली अब तक नहीं वापस से शुरू की जा सकी है।
Devastation across West Bengal and Odisha, and we will be tracking that story very closely here on CNBC-TV18. Coming up next, you can buy your favorite brand of liquor using the Swiggy and Zomato apps, but in specific states. NBF CS and HFCS to help them tide over the COVID-19 related liquidity mismatch. Ritu Singh spoke with a host of NBF CS to gather their feedback on what they've made of the scheme. She joins us now with the details. Ritu, what are NBF CS saying? Why are they not satisfied with the package?
The Cabinet has okayed a 30,000 crore rupees special liquidity facility for NBFCs and housing finance companies, where it proposes that a large public sector bank would set up an SPV that in turn would manage a stressed asset fund which would issue securities to the maximum extent of 30,000 crores. These will be 100% guaranteed by the Government of India and be purchased only by the Reserve Bank of India. But the catch here is that these proceeds from these sale of securities can only be used to purchase NBFC or HFC papers with residual maturity of up to 3 months only. Now, this is where the disappointment of the NBFCs lie. We spoke to a cross-section of heads of NBFCs who believe the scheme is a disappointment, is a non-starter. It'll only provide short-term liquidity buffer to NBFCs and not really help them meet their medium to long-term requirements, which was the ask. They said they need liquidity support of 2 to 3 years, and instead what they've got is only a 3-month liquidity buffer. The only reasoning they think that could be behind offering this 3-month support is that it'll help NBFCs cover that 3-month moratorium period during which borrowers are not repaying, in this time period. But other than that, they're fairly disappointed with the scheme. Gagan Banga, for instance, has told us that he is happy with the scheme and that the markets currently are treating any non-AAA rated paper as junk, and therefore with this scheme there will be some comfort to the markets that NBFCs are not in danger of any imminent default.
All right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. Now, the government stimulus measures enough to help the economy recover from the COVID-19 blow. Top economists believe India needs more fiscal and monetary steps. JP Morgan's Jahangir Aziz has called for more quantitative easing by the central bank. Morgan Stanley's Chetan Iyer said the magnitude of the fiscal response and the delay was a disappointment. Ethan Harris of the Bank of America expects a grim year for the Indian economy. Take a look.
We wrote a big report on quantitative easing in emerging markets, and particularly highlighting the fact that both the high yielders and the low yielders will be forced to do quantitative easing. We've already seen that happen, and I think that India will have to be part of that. You really cannot ask the private sector to fund 1.5 times more than what they had funded the previous year, which was 2019. And there has to be central bank funding, and there has to be forward guidance.
Well, I think the disappointment is more really in terms of the magnitude of policy response. It came in a little late. I think it should have come in much earlier. And there is probably still scope to do some targeted fiscal easing compared to Brazil and some of the other emerging markets. I think India's health response was pretty good.
So we're looking at an economy that was growing at 7% or in that range. It's going to be 0 or negative. Even if you somehow manage to contain the virus within your own country and you have strong monetary and fiscal stimulus, you're still going to get pulled down by global trade. So, India is going to be it's going to be grim in the next year, but I don't think it stands out relative to other countries.
Economists there weighing in on the impact of COVID on the Indian economy. A quick check of the other headlines we're tracking this evening. Swiggy and Zomato to start home delivery of alcohol in Jharkhand's Ranchi. They also plan to expand the service to other cities in the state soon. Swiggy says it's in advanced stages of discussions with multiple state governments to allow the service. Get ready for Amazon Food now. The global e-commerce giant has made its entry into the Indian food delivery market. It's begun the pilot of its online food delivery service at select PIN codes in Bengaluru. For this, Amazon has tied up with restaurants, cloud kitchens, as well as five-star hotels like Radisson and JW Marriott. The Cabinet has approved a 10,000 crore rupee back-ended credit-linked subsidy scheme for about 2 lakh micro-food enterprises. Under this scheme, micro-food units will get a 35% subsidy with a ceiling of up to 10 lakh rupees on total project costs. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Food Processing Minister Harsimrat Kaur Badal said the government is working on laying down guidelines for the scheme and it will take at least a month before the scheme takes off.
It was just passed in the cabinet yesterday and we've already got down to working to lay down the guidelines. So I think this is an extremely important scheme looking at this scenario. So this scheme that has come out for micro enterprises is basically, again, like you had said, that it's a 60-40 scheme to be shared between the center and the state with 35% grant up to an amount of 10 lakhs, which is going to be given to either an enterprise or to farmers, producer groups or to self-help groups or to cooperatives.
Harsimrat Kaur Badal there. 2.4 million Americans have filed for unemployment benefits for the first time last week. The number is along expected lines but takes the total jobs lost in America over the last 9 weeks to over 38 million. Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. The news will continue.